This diagram maps out an ancient cultural assumption that still dictates family planning for millions of people today. In many traditional societies, sons are viewed as a built-in retirement plan. You invest in them, and they protect you in old age. Daughters, on the other hand, are often viewed as temporary liabilities, children who will eventually be married off, taking a dowry with them and depleting your resources. To see how that economic equation holds up against modern reality, we can look at a case study involving two mothers living in the exact same household, Rina and Sandhya. Rina operates entirely on the traditional status quo. She has two sons, and she treats their gender as a guaranteed insurance policy. In her mind, simply feeding and housing boys is enough to secure her own financial future, because cultural norms dictate that sons stay and provide. Sandhya, living under the same roof, takes a different path. She has two daughters, and instead of saving money for their dowries, she redirects her limited resources into human capital. She buys expensive almonds to support their brain development during exam season and prioritizes their higher education above all else. This creates immediate friction. Rina openly mocks Sandhya for wasting money on fruit and nuts for girls. She argues that daughters only need to know how to manage a kitchen before they're married off, and that Sandhya is throwing away cash she should be hoarding for her own old age. These two mothers are running a real-time experiment. On one side, investing in a son's inherent entitlement. On the other, investing in a daughter's capability and education. The results of this comparison show exactly which strategy pays out over a lifetime. The first dividends of Sandhya's strategy arrive during adolescence. Her daughter Nimi studies hard, performs well on her exams, and secures a spot at one of the top colleges in the country. Her human capital investment begins yielding direct independence. In contrast, Rina's approach starts to show cracks. Her son, raised with few responsibilities and a strong sense of entitlement, causes a severe traffic accident with a pedestrian. Rina and her husband are forced to hire a lawyer and pay out an expensive settlement just to keep their son out of jail. That pattern of entitlement accelerates as the boys reach adulthood. Rather than securing a steady job, Rina's son convinces his parents to liquidate a critical chunk of their life savings to fund a vague business venture. The business collapses, taking the family's safety net down with it. This chart tracks the financial trajectories of both households by midlife. Line A belongs to Sandhya. Relieved of the burden of supporting dependent adults, her household stabilizes and curves upward into self-sufficiency. Line B belongs to Rina. Instead of steady growth, her finances suffer violent drops as she repeatedly bails out a son who expects his parents to absorb his failures. Giving a child inherent privilege without demanding accountability turns an assumed asset into a tangible legal and financial liability. This brings us to a pervasive cultural concept, the empty nest marriage myth. This is the belief that when a son marries, he brings a bride into the home to expand the family, but when a daughter marries, she abandons her family and leaves the house empty. When Rina's son gets married, she feels vindicated. A new daughter-in-law moves in, the house is bustling, and Rina assumes her elder care support network is permanently locked in. Sandhya, meanwhile, watches her daughter move away to start a new life in a different city. By every traditional metric, Sandhya's house is now empty, and her investment has walked out the door. This node diagram visualizes how modern family networks actually behave post-marriage. Look at Rina's central family node. Within months of the wedding, the entitled son prioritizes his nuclear family over his parents. They argue, separate their finances, and eventually move out. The son snaps the connection, physically and emotionally isolating his aging parents. But look at the data on Sandhya's side of the visual. Her empowered daughter doesn't disappear. Because she is educated, financially independent, and deeply connected to her parents, she built a bridge. Instead of leaving one home, she connects her new family to her old one, doubling the size of Sandhya's support network. The act of marriage no longer dictates family cohesion. The emotional investment made during childhood dictates who actually stays connected to the family. The final stage of this comparison happens in old age. Rina is physically exhausted. Her son rarely visits, his new wife refuses to help with chores or medical care, and Rina's husband is left paying out of pocket for expensive medications they can no longer afford. Sandhya is living a very different reality. Her daughters wire her substantial stipends every month from their own salaries. When Sandhya and her husband want to relax, their daughters and sons-in-law happily fund their vacations. The breaking point arrives on a quiet afternoon. Reena, out of options and out of money, has to walk downstairs and secretly ask Sandhya for a small cash loan just to buy her husband's basic medicine. Sandhya doesn't even have to dip into her savings. She simply walks into the other room and hands Reena the cash, pulling it directly from the surplus money her daughters had just transferred to her that morning. The cultural assumption that sons are a guaranteed safety net failed to hold up against the reality of these families. Sandhya's approach provided her with a level of security that Reena's sons could not. Reena breaks down. Sitting alone, she admits she spent her life coddling boys to secure her future, and that decades-long strategy collapsed, leaving her begging a neighbor for medicine. Sandhya points out the actual error in Reena's math. Reena didn't fail because she had boys. She failed because she raised them with the entitlement of being sons, teaching them that they deserved the world simply by existing. Sandhya's success came from treating her daughters as capable, empathetic humans, regardless of their gender. She focused on building their individual strengths rather than preparing them for a subservient cultural role. In this comparison, the outcome wasn't decided by the sex of the child, but by the relationship and capability cultivated over 20 years. When the tradition of the son as a provider met the reality of an entitled upbringing, the tradition broke. These children didn't support their parents because of gender-based rules. They did it because of the values they were raised with.